Hi, thanks for returning to my channel for Chapter 7 of True Colors. In the last episode, Cassie went to the military ball with Lieutenant Thomason. It didn't end quite in a Cinderella fashion, but I think it ended actually better than that, don't you? And in this episode, we're finally going to find out about that mysterious book that Sergeant Levitt passed to Cassie way back in Chapter 1. So let's go and join them and find out all about that.
True Colors, Chapter 7. I offered my apologies to the Bormans for my sudden change of plans and thanked Jeanette for the opportunity to dress so richly and enjoy myself so much. It was a lovely evening, wasn't it, dear Cassie? Quite lovely, I offered an assuring smile. Cal arranged for a brougham taxi. We exchanged not a word on the way to my boarding house. When we arrived, he helped me alight from the carriage and accompanied me to the door. As I retrieved my key from my bag, Cal's voice came as chilled as the night air had become. "I guess this is goodbye." "Cal, please believe me when I say I'm truly sorry that things turned out the way they did." "It's done. I suppose I shall forgive you in time." My jaw set in anger. "And what about the way you demeaned me? I had a lot to lose, Cassandra. I was to be, I know, the first. You still are, Cal. You're the first assistant surgeon to make a fool of himself in the presence of the Surgeon General." He went dumbstruck. "And Cal, about your Swedish ancestors, they were not the first permanent settlers in Pennsylvania. They were too. They came in 1643 and bumped into some Indians. Unless your ancestors number among the Indian tribes that inhabited that land, you can't claim to be descendant from the original settlers." "You know what I mean." His loathing for me was palpable. "I'm afraid I do." I offered him my hand. "Good night, sweet prince." His limp hand took hold of my fingers only and gave them one brusque downward jerk. I watched as he hurried down the steps and entered the cab. As it pulled away, I turned, set the key in the lock, and opened the door. So much for Prince Charming. "What was that, Miss Golden?" I whirled around. "Major Byron, how long have you been lurking there in the shadows?" He leapt up the steps 2 at a time. "Long enough to hear your admirable rebuke of the vainglorious lieutenant." The parlor was illumined only by the light from the street lamp. I entered and stood just inside the door, waiting for my eyes to adjust. Major Byron crossed his arms as he leaned against the doorframe, and long enough to take notice of the fact that he didn't kiss you good night. "Well, we only met last Sunday. It wouldn't be proper." I stepped cautiously in the dark toward the round lamp table. Besides, considering how the evening went, he scarcely had reason to want to. He needed a reason? Thankfully, he could not see my face flush nor my moist fingers fumbling with the matches. Mrs. Fillmore wasn't expecting me tonight, otherwise the lamp would have been lit. I finally managed to light the wick and replace the chimney. I then lit a small carrying lantern that sat on a shelf. "I'll go up and get the book for you, Major. I know you're anxious to have it." He stepped toward me. "Levitt must have thought highly of you to entrust it to you." "Did you come to the hospital that first night to get the book?" "Yes. And the next night, when it wasn't with his belongings, we thought the worst." "We?" "I'm with the intelligence arm of the War Department. Some call it the Secret Service. You see, when Levitt's unit was patrolling south of the city, they came upon a house where Confederate conspirators were in the midst of a deliberation over that book. They had somehow gotten a hold of it but couldn't grasp its significance. Neither could Levitt, but he was savvy enough to realize how important it must be to have plagued them so. His commanding officer sent him to us with it, but he was followed, got his leg broken in a brutal fight that ensued, and thus ended up in your hospital. He got a message to us saying he had the book and that his attacker, although sustaining some broken bones of his own, had gotten away. He figured the Rebs might track him down to get at that book. Apparently that's why he asked you, someone he dared to trust, to get it out of there until one of us came for it. After surviving all that danger, how ironic that he succumbed to an embolism. I heard it was a blood clot. Is that the same thing? I nodded. But Major, I looked through that book. Levitt said I could. And it's just an army manual on railroad reconstruction. It hardly seems worth risking his life over. You saw nothing out of the ordinary either? Nothing. Then it works. What works? The method we used to camouflage the information. I couldn't hide my confusion. I'll go get it. I picked up the lantern. If you don't mind, I'll take the time to change out of this gown. Must you? You do such wonders for that gown. One more of his blushworthy comments and my composure was sure to dissolve. I rather think the reverse is true, but I shall consider myself fortunate to reach the top of the stairs without incident. I dare not try to descend them ensnared in these hoops and cages. Once in my room, I worked my way out of the gown, a much quicker and easier task than donning it, escaped from my jail cell and wrenched free of the rib-crushing grip of my undergarments. I took one long, deep breath, my lungs cherishing their freedom. I slipped into my light blue Garibaldi blouse, placed a bretelle corselet around me to dress up the blouse a bit, and pulled a dark blue skirt over my head. My cameo I left in place. Standing before the mirror, I replaced some stray hairs that had fallen from my now loose curls, and what was I doing? Primping as if he had come to call? I started to remove the corselet, hesitated, then left it in place, smiling as I did so. Downstairs I found the Major scanning the titles in a large bookcase in the parlor. Mrs. Fillmore allows her boarders to read from her collection whenever we like, which has oft times been my saving grace. And quite a collection it is. Shakespeare, the Brontes, Dickens, the works of Shelley, Keats, Byron. Any relation? None that I'm aware of. I held out the reason for his coming. Your book, Major Byron. Flipping through the pages, he walked to the lamp, folded the back cover over the binding, and held individual pages out before the light, studying them as a hawk would its ground prey from 300 feet. He did this to several before my curiosity could no longer be contained. What are you doing? Come over here, Cassie. I was nearly at his side before I realized he had called me by my first name. He had not asked my permission, but I felt pleasure at the sound of it nonetheless. Look closely at this page. I leaned closer to the book and to the outstretched arms that held it. I squinted in an attempt to capture something out of the ordinary. Why, there are wee holes in the page, like the tiniest of pinpricks. He turned some pages, and we observed similar punctures on them. What does this mean? Have you ever heard of Braille? Braille? I straightened and tried to remember where I had heard the term. Why, yes. I read about it in one of my father's journals. It's a system of raised dots whereby blind people can read with their fingers. Exactly. And this, he held the closed book in front of me, has messages in Braille. But those holes couldn't be detectable to the fingers. But you can study them under a lens, note the arrangement of the dots, and interpret the message. He picked up a pencil from the table and wrote on the leaf of the book. You see, the system is based on a cell of 6 dots, 3 rows high and 2 columns wide. Each letter has its own arrangement of dots. The alphabet starts by using combinations of the top 4 dots. By adding the lower left-hand dot, 10 more letters are made, and so on. There are 63 possible arrangements, so you can also make numbers and some digraphs such as CH, SH, and TH. How ingenious! It really is. It's not a widely known system, and I must ask that you never repeat to anyone what you saw and heard here tonight. I looked at the book, then back at him. Should you be trusting me with this information? He shook his head. But I believe I can, Miss Golden. I felt a bit let down by his return to the use of my surname. Trust doesn't come easy to someone in my position. You'd be surprised at the number of people who seem only casually interested in the latest war gossip who turn out to be Confederate spies. How do you know I'm not one of them? Because the book is still here, and you handed it over to me, and because Levitt obviously trusted you. I'm sure he would have observed you with great scrutiny before handing over something so crucial. You obviously passed his test, and mine. You've been observing me with great scrutiny? Oh, yes. And my finely honed powers of observation convey that you were the most beautiful woman at the ball tonight. Again came the flushes. I must admit I feel much more comfortable in gingham than in a borrowed ball gown and all of its accoutrements. And with your hair down. He reached to caress the wisps that fell in loose spirals from my temples. His fingertips moved down, following the curves of my jaw and neck, touching the velvet ribbon necklace and gliding to the cameo. He gently lifted the bottom edge and studied it. This isn't borrowed. It was my mother's. She and my father died together several years ago. He responded with a silent thought for a moment. I imagine it would be the best way for two people who love each other to die. Together, I mean. My gaze fell from his. There was a fire. They apparently slept through it until the dense smoke finally awakened them. It appeared they tried to get to a window, but were overcome. When their bodies were found, they were in an embrace. I always think of them as being together in death as they were in life. The heavy stillness surrounding us matched the emptiness that even now came upon me when I reminisced about the loss of my parents. I turned away and stood facing the lamp, absently running my hand along its painted glass base. The cameo is one of the few possessions salvaged from the ruins, along with her wedding dress and some of his medical texts. I turned again to face him. I'm sorry, Major. You didn't come here to harvest so much personal information from me. I'm a bit astonished myself. I've never shared these thoughts with anyone outside of a few close relatives. In a tender voice, he said, "Now we both hold secret for one another." The moment lingered. He studied my face, his eyes settling on my lips. His own lips parted as if eager to meet mine. But then, as if thinking better of it, he turned his head and let out a breath. I should go. He stepped away, and I accompanied him to the door. Neither of us took the initiative to open it. I hope that book is still of some use to you, Major. I feel terrible about having kept it this long. The important thing is that it didn't fall into the wrong hands. He slid his hand into mine, and the way I see it, it couldn't have fallen into better hands. He raised my hand to his lips and kissed it as he had earlier at the ball. May I call for you on Sunday morning, Miss Golden? I attend church on Sundays when I'm off. I could pick you up if you like. I smiled. I would like that very much. The service begins at 10, and actually, this Sunday I happen to be free all day. My illusion that perhaps we could spend more than just the morning together made him noticeably uneasy. I'm sorry, Major. My mother and Aunt Clarissa would be shivering in their graves if they heard me speak with such forthrightness. No, it's all right. I prefer forthrightness. It's just that... He shifted his weight and squeezed the book in his hand unmercifully. Miss Golden, my work is of a sensitive nature. I cannot speak of it, and I am away from the city a lot. I'm not a man who would make a proper suitor. I understand, I said, although it wasn't entirely true. Why had he offered to call for me on Sunday? It was clear that opposing sides were clashing within him. I decided to settle it for him and relieve myself of additional humiliation. You needn't concern yourself further, Major. I release you from your invitation to take me to church on Sunday. I do not wish to be released. At my befuddled look, he said, I apologize for my indecisiveness. It is not my habit. But you, Miss Golden, have utterly derailed me. You see, I resolved early on to abstain from courtship while this war rages. It has proven to be a perfectly sound plan, until tonight. As challenging it has been for me to refrain from asking to see you again after walking you home from the hospital, tonight you have made it downright impossible. So I ask that you not release me from my offer to accompany you to church, and go so far as to ask that you reserve that afternoon for me as well. My voice lost to me, I agreed to both with a nod. His eyes once again moved to my lips. His head slowly lowered. Without a hint of indecision this time, he pressed a kiss to my lips. It lasted but a moment, but it was rapturous. He opened the door and, though visibly disinclined to do so, went out. He turned at the top step of the porch. You will remember about Sunday, won't you, Miss Golden? I smiled. I'm not likely to forget, Major Byron.
We finally have some resolution on a couple of things. Now we know why that book was so significant to the Union cause, and we have a better understanding of why Major Byron was reluctant to pursue Cassie despite his clear interest in her. So join us next time and see where that relationship goes. And it goes to some pretty fantastic places. If you liked this video and are enjoying these stories, please click on the thumbs up button, share with your friends who you know are interested in these type of stories, and subscribe too. It would be helpful. Thanks, and see you next time.